powerful tank that could shrug off a direct hit from most anti-tank weapons. This Russian super tank isn't just about brute force, it's a technological marvel that can unleash a torrent of firepower while simultaneously defending itself with a strong protection system. Yes, we're talking about a tank that can literally shoot down incoming missiles. So, what makes this metal monster so terrifying? Let's peel back the armor and see what makes the T-14 Armata tick. So, stay tuned and don't forget to tap that red subscribe button first. Since the days they first rumbled across the battlefield in World War I, tanks have been the heavy hitters of warfare. But Russia isn't content with just sticking to the old favorites like the T-72 or T-90. No, they've gone all in on the T-14 Armata, their shiny new main battle tank. While the other countries are slapping upgrades onto their existing tanks, Russia started from scratch. They figured it was time to bring their armored forces into the 21st century. The wake-up call came during the Chechen War in the early 2000s. Russian tanks were getting chewed up, especially in cramped urban combat. So, they put their heads together and got to work on something better. It was all hush-hush at first. They kept the project under wraps until 2013, when they finally let the cat out of the bag. Then, in 2015, they rolled out the T-14 Armata for the world to see at a military parade. Now, let's talk about this beast. Made by the people at Uralvagonzavod, the T-14 isn't exactly flooding the market. They've only made a few so far, but each one is a marvel of modern engineering. What makes it stand out? Well, for starters, it's built on the Armata Universal Combat Platform. Fancy name, right? Basically, this means they can tweak and customize it to fit different missions. First off, let's talk firepower. When it comes to firepower, the T-14's got some serious muscle. It's packing the latest version of the trusty 125mm cannon right now. But there's talk of beefing it up to a whopping 152mm. It'll be the biggest gun ever seen on a post-war battle tank if they pull it off. That serious firepower could give even the toughest Western armor a run for its money. Plus, with a bigger gun, they could cook up some meaner guided munitions to really shake things up. But firepower alone doesn't win battles. It's all about how the crew uses it. That's where the T-14's advanced sights, sensors, and fire control systems come into play. Let's not forget about the Active Protection System, APS, which not only shields the tank, but also helps the crew stay on top of what's happening on the battlefield. It's like having an extra set of eyes and ears, ready to warn you about incoming threats and even dish out some counterfire if needed. Currently, laser shields, like the ones depicted in movies, don't exist. Military laser technology focuses on high-powered beams for offensive, not defensive. While research is ongoing, creating a deployable laser shield capable of deflecting projectiles is still a long way off. And the T-14 Armata's ability to shoot down incoming missiles isn't quite as dramatic as it sounds, but it's still an impressive feat of engineering. Let's see how it works with the help of the APS system. The radar picks up the incoming projectile, calculates its trajectory, and sends this information to the APS computer. In milliseconds, the APS launches preloaded countermeasures from launchers mounted on the tank's exterior. These countermeasures are typically small, explosive charges. The countermeasures are timed to detonate near the incoming missile, creating a blast wave. This blast wave disrupts the missile's flight path in two ways. The first is the kinetic kill, which is the force of the explosion that can physically nudge the missile off course, causing it to miss the tank. The second is premature detonation. In some cases, the blast wave can trigger the missile's own warhead to detonate prematurely at a safe distance from the tank. Speaking of crews, the people inside the T-14 have it pretty high-tech too. Everything's digitized, with screens feeding them all sorts of info. And there's even talk of a future unmanned version of the tank. With all the digital bells and whistles already in place, it might not be such a stretch to imagine a crewless version hitting the battlefield someday. For Russia, the T-14 Armata isn't just another tank, it's a major upgrade they've been needing for a while. But they need to make sure they can actually afford to build enough of these tanks. The plan calls for a hefty number of tanks, but with economic troubles looming, it's anyone's guess if they can pull it off. Still, progress is being made, with prototypes being put through their paces and an initial batch of tanks already in the pipeline. In terms of how it looks and what it can do, the Armata is different from its predecessors, the T-90 and the T-72B3. The lower profile of those tanks was meant to make them less likely to be hit. The Armata, on the other hand, is built to face any risks it might face head-on. Its fully automated turret, which is sealed off from the crew, makes it less likely that the ammo will explode and do much damage. This feature comes from Western tank designs. Western tanks, like the Israeli Merkava, which gave the Armata its idea, prioritize crew safety. With its high profile and focus on composite armor, the Merkava's design has been successful against irregular threats in wars like the one in Lebanon in 2006. On the other hand, the Russian military's experiences in the First Chechen War showed how weak standard tank deployment and crews made up of soldiers were. Russia's foreign policy goals in the area can be seen in the Armata's design. Although Russia may have nuclear weapons to protect its territory, conventional forces are seen as much more important for projecting power in the area. Because it is flexible, the Armata works well in situations involving hybrid warfare, such as battles like the one in Ukraine, or when there are possible threats in the Caucasus. But there are still many unknowns about the Armata. Even though the Kremlin tries to show off its power, no one has yet tested its effectiveness. Russia seems to want to modernize its military because it values quality more than numbers, but it's hard to tell its real goals. Now, back to the point. The T-14 is also a beast on the move, thanks to its powerful engine and advanced transmission. It can hit speeds of up to 80 to 90 kilometers an hour, leaving other tanks in the dust. And with its unique suspension system, it can pivot like nobody's business, making it a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. However, despite all its cutting-edge features, some parts of the T-14 might not be entirely made in Russia. There's been some speculation about certain components being sourced from outside the country. But as long as it gets the job done, right? Before proceeding, let's first discuss a bit about this tank's history. In 2010, Russia pulled the plug on the T-95 project and kicked off the OKR Armata armament study. This study led to the birth of the Object 148, a souped-up version of the T-95, itself derived from the Object 187. Got it? Good. Fast forward to March 2015. A bunch of tanks with their turrets all covered up, loaded onto train carriages in Alabino. Then, on May 9th, during the 2015 Moscow Victory Day parade, boom, the T-14 Armata made its grand debut. But only some things went smoothly at first. During parade rehearsals, one of the tanks decided to take an unexpected coffee break, stopping dead in its tracks. They tried to tow it, but no dice. After 15 minutes of suspense, it suddenly played nice and moved independently. Since then, these tanks have been appearing at the Moscow Victory Day parade like nobody's business. At least 7 showed up in 2015 and 2016, followed by 5 in 2017 and 2018. They even teased us with 4 promotional materials for the 2019 parade. Now, let's talk trials. In early 2020, they kicked off the state trials for the T-14. Guess what? Rumor has it that these babies have already seen some action in the Syrian Arab Republic. Yeah, you heard that right. Combat tested and ready to roll. In July 2020, they announced testing for an unmanned version of the T-14, cleverly named Tachanka B. Who needs a driver when you have all this cutting-edge tech? Am I right? In November 2022, word got out that the whole T-14 Armata program hit a speed bump. The Russian invasion of Ukraine threw a wrench into their plans, forcing them to shuffle around some cash for urgent needs. But fear not, because on March 4th, 2024, Sergei Kemzov declared that the T-14 Armata officially joined the ranks of the Russian armed forces. Let's talk about the T-14's uncrewed turret. It's a total game changer. It's the first battle tank to ever roll out with this mind-blowing feature. Sure, other big players like Germany and the US flirted with the idea, but Russia is the only one who actually made it happen. Now, ditching the crew from the turret isn't just a flashy move, it's smart. It slashes the risk to human lives and beefs up protection for the crew tucked away in the front chassis. Plus, it frees up space for serious weight savings, making this tank nimbler. There's some debate about how much each T-14 Armata tank will cost. While the prototypes reportedly burned through a lot of cash, the price tag is expected to drop as more tanks roll off the assembly line. Most of the cost isn't just for the basic tank itself, but also for all the fancy gadgets and gizmos packed inside, like the fire control system and the active protection system, APS. But there's room to trim costs if they play their cards right. Now, don't expect every tank out of the factory to be as decked out as the ones they've been showing off. Future batches might not have all the bells and whistles of those parade prototypes. And if they start turning out different versions of the Armata platform, they could save some cash by using the same parts across the board. Plus, they could snag some big export deals, especially with countries like China showing some interest. If Russia's dreams for the T-14 come true, it could shake things up for the West. This tank isn't just a small step up, it's a giant leap forward in tank tech. That's got Western forces rethinking their own tank game. Instead of pouring all their resources into beefing up tank power, they've been more focused on dealing with the unconventional threats popping up around the world. But there's some worry in the West about what this new tank means for them. Facing off against a beefed-up Russian military isn't exactly a walk in the park. And while the West might not run into the T-14 on the battlefield right away, there's a good chance they'll see it in action through export deals. Russian tanks have always had a strong presence on the global market, and the T-14 looks set to continue that tradition. Plus, it's pushing the envelope when it comes to tank design, with uncrewed turrets and fancy APS tech. Other countries are taking notes and thinking about how they can step up their own tank game. Overall, the Armata is a big step forward for the Russian military. However, it remains to be seen how it will affect conflicts and dynamics in the area. Are you ready to see this terrifying super tank in action? Share your thoughts on this in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel before signing off. Check out our channel for more such interesting videos.